In 2015, Abano Pass wasn't particularly kind to us. After reaching it in the conditions you saw at the end of the last episode, we decided to spend the night there. Especially after asking a Georgian, who was also stuck at the pass, about the road ahead and hearing him say "Tam smert," which meant if you go any farther you will die. That was pretty convincing. Speaking of conviction, I wasn't entirely convinced that it was safe to stay in a rooftop tent at an altitude of 2,800 meters while a storm rocked overhead and lightning started striking around us. So shortly after 6 a.m., I made the call to move into the car instead.
Jaka to wysokość?
2895.
Godzina 54, utknęliśmy. Zastanawiamy się, co dalej, ale chyba w taką drogę nie będziemy jechać dalej.
Brzmi jak te nagrania z tych filmów pożegnalnych, tych wszystkich.
Przynajmniej nie tymi półkami skalnymi, którymi jeździliśmy.
Nie wiedziałem.
Tak, czekamy.
Well, if not along the ledges, then not at all, because there simply was no other way. But as it turned out, we could have been waiting here for days as the clouds settled over the summit for good. So as soon as the rain let up, even if just for a moment, we decided to move on.
To jest wyjeżdżone, więc widać, woda jest naszym przewodnikiem tutaj.
The driving experience wasn't exactly comfortable, knowing that a single wrong move of the steering wheel could end this journey for good. On top of that, we were well aware that we were missing out on breathtaking views completely obscured by the thick fog. All we could really do was focus on driving safely and hope that these conditions wouldn't last forever. But as you can see, things were only getting worse rather than better. Abano Pass serves as a natural climate boundary. On the Kakheti side, the climate is drier and warmer, while on the other, in Tusheti, a cooler and more humid mountain climate prevails. It's common for travelers to experience a drastic weather change upon crossing. We, however, didn't notice much of a dramatic shift. Aside from the fact that freezing rain started to fall, the visibility remained as poor as it had been the night before. Now, the drive was nothing like those past experiences. The road was dry, visibility was completely unobscured, allowing us to access potential challenges well in advance, prepare for maneuvers ahead of time, and, just as importantly, fully take in the breathtaking panorama of the Tusheti and Caucasus without any limitations. Take another look at this road from the perspective of that past trip. It's a perfect example of how weather conditions can completely change the way we perceive a place. And now, things were completely different. You could almost call it boring. Sure, it was wet, but it didn't really make much of an impression. Back then, the height was obscured, and that uncertainty seemed to amplify the feeling of unease more than actually seeing the drop-off on one side as now. Because here, even with a sheer drop beside me, I feel no discomfort at all. I'm just cruising alone, admiring the views, without any sense that I'm taking on one of the most dangerous roads in Europe. Now, on the other hand, it was starting to get dark. As is often the case in the mountains, night falls quickly after sunset, and that's exactly what we experience here. Knowing that this particular stretch of the route didn't offer many good spots to camp for the night, I started considering my options. I didn't remember the road well enough to know exactly where we could stop, but I also wasn't keen on driving the entire remaining distance to Omalo in the dark, so I decided to catch up with Cocovintageoverland, who had driven ahead while I was packing up my immersive video gear at Abano Pass, and just stay alert for any flat, open meadow where we could set up a camp. I spotted two potential spots. I tried to signal Hans with my headlamps and horn to get him to stop. The first time I thought it had worked, but it turned out it hadn't and they kept driving. So I tried again. No luck. Then the terrain became more challenging and it looked like there wouldn't be anywhere to stop at all. Unfortunately, the downside of nighttime travel is that even if a perfect campsite were right next to us, we could easily miss it because we simply couldn't see what was around the car. So I kept driving behind Hans, who in my opinion didn't really know where we were heading away. This trip was my idea after all. I was just waiting for him to stop on his own. And of course, that finally happened after a few kilometers, when we reached a fork in the road and he wasn't sure which way to go.
Why you didn't stop when I flashed my lights and I was using my horn? We missed like 2 places we could stay. Now we're in the complete darkness, we just... But I was flashing the lights.
Yeah, I thought it's from the bumps.
No, come on. Really? From the bumps? Okay. Because now it will be difficult to find something. But okay, let's try.
Skręć w lewo. Kieruj się na północ.
I also took a moment to consider which way to go. I could see that the road straight ahead would lead us to Omalo. I was tempted to take the right turn, a route I hadn't driven before, but I wasn't sure if we would be able to make it through. And nighttime isn't the best time for experiments, so I decided to stick to the familiar path. Fortunately, we didn't have to drive far. Just about a kilometer past the fork, I spotted a clearing by the river with a small track leading down to it. I decided to check if we could stop there for the night and drove down to the riverbank. The ground was quite soggy and I drove down with some hesitation. The last thing I wanted after a full day of driving was to mess around with the winch. Fortunately, aside from a few puddles, the meadow was firm enough that we could park without the feeling of sinking into the mud. And just like that, another day came to an end. I woke up a little earlier in the morning. The valley was still bathed in cold, muted colors as if it hadn't quite shaken off the night yet. A little clearing was almost the perfect spot for a short stop. Maybe a bit too close to the road, but luckily it wasn't very busy, so nothing disturbed our night silence. My early wake-up was driven by impatience. I simply couldn't wait to check whether the drone, which had its unfortunate encounter with the tree in the previous episode, would still be able to fly with only 2 newly replaced propellers and 2 others with slightly torn tips. So the first thing I did after getting up was run some tests to make sure I'd still be able to capture aerial views for the rest of the trip. Of course, in my impatience, I didn't notice that the ND filter was still on the lens, which in these light conditions caused exposure issues, so I had to land and swap it out. Catching a drone while it's in the air can be a bit tricky. Because of the sensors underneath, it actively tries to avoid obstacles, so when it detects a hand approaching, it instinctively moves away. The trick is to make a decisive and quick grab. If done fast enough, the sensors won't have time to react and you can catch the drone safely. Once again, I double check that all the parameters are okay, and I lift off, ready to take some shots of the surroundings from above. I hate waking up early in the city, but mornings like this, out in nature, even still wrapped in mist, I absolutely love. A mountain morning is a moment when nature hasn't fully awakened, as if it's still hesitating to surrender the valley to the day. The light is cool and pale, painting the landscape in shades of grey and silver. The river, lazily winding through the valley, sets the tone with its steady murmur, monotonous yet hypnotic like the deep breath of the slumbering earth. Mist, or perhaps newborn clouds, drift over slopes thickly covered in dark green trees. It gently settles over the meadows, wrapping them in a milky translucent veil. The mountain seems to breathe, their invisible exile rolling down into the valley, waving between the trees and bushes like a silken shroud. From above, the landscape reveals how the slopes converge towards the river, as if cradling it in a protective embrace. The treetops, dusted with the soft patches of mist, look as though someone has scattered tufts of cotton across them. Amid this misty mystery, faint outlines of rooftops emerge through the fog. An isolated village, its houses blurred like distant memories of past journeys. And there, in the very heart of the wild, on a tiny clearing, stand our two expedition vehicles. The raised roofs still echo the soothing, restorative night that shelter weary travelers. But soon, once the morning bustle comes to an end, they will set off again, following the path of the wandering clouds. The first challenge we had to face was the climb. I wasn't expecting any major surprises here, but Hans was concerned that his worn-out tires might struggle on the mix of mud and wet grass covering the slope. I approached the task methodically, engaged low range in advance, shifted into second gear and rolled up the hill smoothly. A few times I felt his wheels starting to slip, but it didn't affect the steady, controlled pace of the climb at all. Since Hans had voiced some concerns, I decided to cheer him on with the camera. Maybe, for once, I'd get to capture a moment where the Toyota couldn't make it. Though, looking at the incline, I found it hard to believe he would actually struggle. Hans, however, went at it with full enthusiasm, attacking the hill with full throttle. Watching him wrestle with the steering wheel, I realized he really was battling with the slipping front wheels. Those bald tires were indeed causing some trouble. But the Toyota held its own, and moments later, with a round of cheers from us, Hans made it to the top.
Wrong direction!
After a short while, we were back on the road. This part of the route to Omalo follows the valley floor, and for the next 3 kilometers, we're simply cruising along, enjoying the morning. We were at an altitude of 1700 meters with the road running alongside the river. At first, the water flowed almost level with the truck, only to soon drop away, echoing through the valleys dozens of meters below. Since Georgian sheep showed absolutely no respect for the Toyota, I had to briefly take on the role of a shepherd and clear the road. Right after this unexpected stop, we began to climb up the switchbacks just before the plateau where Omalo is located. This stretch is just over 2.5 kilometers long and helps us ascend nearly 200 meters in elevation. There aren't any dramatic drop-offs here, but the views over the valley below and the villages nestled into the slopes on the other side of the river were a welcome change from the tree-lined track we had been following earlier. This spot is definitely one of the most scenic along the route. And what made it even more special were the people experiencing these breathtaking landscapes from their horseback. That must be a completely different way to take it in the surroundings, one I'd love to try one day. After the climb, we briefly split up, as Coco wanted to linger a bit longer on the lush green carpet of the vast plateau. I, on the other hand, continued toward the old part of Omalo where I planned to wait for them. But...
Yep, sometimes you just do stupid mistakes like this. I didn't notice the ditch down there. I missed the road, so I started to reverse. And when I engaged the second gear, because I'm on the lower gearbox, I just failed that I'm sliding down and there was nothing I could do. So as there's no trees around, I need to wait for somebody to help me get out of here. Yep. Adventure. Hopefully there's no huge damage on the back. Really hope.
Let's relive this moment once again. The situation was as follows. While heading towards the old part of Omalo, I turned left too early. The correct turn was just beyond that hill, but I got misled by the signs along the road. As it turned out, I had simply driven onto someone's private property, so I had no choice but to turn around. A small clearing, as you can see, seemed perfect. Solid ground, a concrete wall on the left, and an earth embankment on the right. Nothing could possibly go wrong here. And yet, if you follow my channel, you've seen me safely turn around in much more challenging places. Narrow rock ledges where it was barely possible to fit the cart sideways. So what could go wrong here? Behind me was a soft dirt wall. At worst, I would just lean against it. And lean against it I did. As you can see, the nearest trees were far away. With my sleeping drivetrain, I was hesitant to go full throttle, so I handled Prowler very gently in this situation. After a few attempts, I simply gave up, not wanting to cause even more damage to the drive. I decided to winch myself out. The only thing left was to find a solid anchor point. Since I was on a private land, I didn't want to damage anything either, so my only option was to find someone I could attach the winch line to. So I just had to wait until Cocovintage passed by and use this seemingly minor mishap as a chance to create some extra content. Since the impact was loud, my biggest concern was that the spare wheel mount might have damaged the rear door. I could only hope that the rear winch mount had taken the full hit and saved the door from getting dented. Of course, there was also the matter of the exhaust tip, but that was the least of my worries. I believe that if the drivetrain had been fully functional, getting out of there wouldn't have been a big deal, but in this situation, it became impossible. Unfortunately, as is often the case in situations like this, there was of course no coverage, so I couldn't contact Coco to ask where they were and if they could help. So instead of wasting time, I decided to get everything ready in advance. Another round of winch line pulling, guaranteeing a bit of physical activity in this otherwise very seat-focused way of exploring the world. Passing drivers on the nearby road seemed oblivious to my presence. At first, I was more expressive in trying to get their attention, but after a while, feeling slightly resigned, I decided to simply wait for Hans. I secured the rope against the cart to prevent the fibers from frying and kept waiting, wondering if there was a chance that Coco wouldn't be passing this way at all. Fortunately, my worries turned out to be unfounded. After a brief explanation of the situation, I got ready for yet another self-recovery operation on this trip. I don't think I've ever used my winch this many times on a vacation. Following Hans' instructions, I secured a synthetic shackle, threading it through a frame opening. Hans went to hand off Claudia's dog while I clipped the rope, double-checked that it was holding tight, and headed back to the car.
I just need it very steady, slow. I hope that it's because this is the winch, so I don't want to destroy the winch and the back.
Normally, I would have used the kinetic rope strapped to my hood, but unfortunately, that wasn't an option in this situation.
Wait a minute. It's not gonna be easy.
No. Because it's also not straight, you know? This is the shit.
Now, how's my back looking?
I don't know, but it's soft. Look, it's soft. It's not stone, fortunately. No, it's not that bad. Look. Because it's soft.
I have, when I fell down, I heard the sound like, and I was like,
oh,
okay.
no, shit.
Yeah,
The gas bottle? No, it's too high.
it looks okay.
But it looks okay because it's weak.
Soft, yeah. All right, another recovery session. This time I didn't die, but it was so close. I could slip down, roll over, break my neck.
You're probably wondering what that last performance of mine was all about, so let me explain. During our conversations with Hans and Claudia, we had quite a laugh about certain YouTube channels that tend to create unnecessary drama out of situations that don't really warrant it. One channel in particular, run by a girl with 1 million subscribers, really stood out to us. One of her so-called blood-curdling stories was about the lug nuts on her rear wheel coming loose after a tire change. Something that, according to her narration, could have ended in tragedy and she might have died, or even worse. Of course, we get that sensationalism sells, but we all felt a strong inner resistance to that kind of storytelling. At one point, we even joked that maybe I should start adding more drama to my own content, just to attract a broad audience craving suspense and thrill. You know, views above all. But in the end, I decided not to frame this as dramatic rescue mission and instead just leave it as a joke. Meanwhile, we arrived in the center of Omalo. Our plan was simple: grab a pastry, enjoy a coffee, and, of course, take in the breathtaking view from above. Omalo sits at an altitude of approximately 2100 meters above sea level. It is one of the most isolated settlements in Georgia and the historical capital of Tusheti region. It's a place where time seems to stand still, where traditions have endured for centuries despite, or perhaps because of, its isolation and harsh environment. The village was established as one of the region's most important settlements, serving both as a pastoral center and a strategic stronghold against invaders. Perched on the natural plateau between two valleys, it offered excellent defensive advantages. Omalo's most iconic feature is the Castello Towers, medieval stone watchtowers that still dominate the skyline. Built in the 13th century, they were fortresses designed to withstand Mongol invasions and later attacks from Lezgins of Dagestan. Despite its strategic significance and rich cultural heritage, Omalo and the entire Tusheti region remain almost entirely isolated from the rest of Georgia for centuries. Today, however, Omalo is experiencing a small renaissance, largely driven by tourism. This region, though still only inhabited seasonally, as winters in Tusheti are too harsh, attracts travelers in search of authentic, untamed landscapes during the summer months. Most visitors make it only as far as Omalo, but I'm to go farther, to Girevi, a remote village located about 20 kilometers northwest of Omalo in a straight line. It is the last settlement accessible by car. The road winds almost entirely through the forest. It's a well-maintained gravel track, only changing in quality after passing Dartlo, the next village beyond Omalo. The road's passability largely depends on the water levels of the mountain streams, but this time the crossing poses no serious challenge. The river, meandering at the foot of Dartlo's stone houses, flow peacefully, reflecting the steel-grey hues of the sky and its current. Along its banks stretch lush soft meadows like green carpets woven by nature, providing a home for grazing horses. Scattered along the river's edge, they seem like a harmonious part of the landscape. Some nibble on the fresh grass unbothered, while others curiously observe the intruder who has appeared near the waters. In the background, nestled against the green slopes and watched over by the ruins of the ancient fortress of Kvadlo, stands Dartlo, a village untouched by time, surviving since the Middle Ages. The remnants of the Tushetian court can still be found here, a place where elders and warriors once gathered to settle disputes according to traditional law. Looking up beyond the stone rooftops of Dartlo, one can see Kvadlo, a tiny settlement perched even higher on a steep rock. Its watchtowers since serve as defensive outposts, allowing villagers to survey the entire valley. If danger approached, signals were sent to nearby villages, giving them time to prepare for defense. Few venture to Kvadlo today. The climb is steep, demanding effort, but the reward is unparalleled panoramic views stretching across the valley below. From Dartlo, I continue northwest. The road follows the river, presenting no real challenge. Puddles appear here and there, but even by Western standards, the surface is in excellent condition. It's hard to believe that there's almost no vehicle traffic here. Instead, I occasionally come across riders on horses, a sight that immediately transforms the atmosphere of this place, making it feel even more timeless. This is a green wilderness, broken only by a single shepherd's shelter along the way. Other than that, no signs of civilization, and I loved it. Just look at this idyllic landscape. A mountain stream carves its way through the slopes, gleaming ribbons sliding gently across the lush meadows. Then, suddenly, at the edge of a cliff, it becomes a waterfall. Yet, even as it plunges downward, it moves with an effortless grace, as if dancing with the air. The water bursts into countless silver strands, swirling in the sunlight before crashing against the rocks below. A fine mist rises, carried away by the wind over the valley. And then, as if nothing had happened, the stream regathers itself into a narrow trickle flowing onward. The valley unfolds before it, wide and welcoming, and the stream, a silent traveler, disappears in its embrace, whispering stories gathered from the mountain's peaks. I move away from the stream for a moment, leaving it below on the left. The road now winds like a thin ribbon along the edge of a precipice, only to soon stretch as a grey thread across the wide, almost flat slopes on the next mountain. Here, once again, I pass locals on horseback, blending seamlessly into this rugged landscape. Farther ahead, the road narrows again. Here, passing another vehicle requires careful maneuvering. Sometimes reversing several dozen meters, sometimes just a few. Even then, there's no easy way out. One must either drive over scattered rock slides or press tightly against the sheer stone wall to make way. And that's exactly what happened this time. It's easy to see why villages hidden so deep in the mountains are only inhabited during the summer months. This road becomes completely impassable once it's buried under snow, and snowfall here can be intense. But it wasn't always like this. Centuries ago, the inhabitants of settlements like Dartlo, Girevi or Parsma, which we're about to reach, lived here year-round and during even the harshest winters. The winters in Tusheti can be extreme. Snow can cover the ground from October to May, and temperatures often drop below -20°C. Such conditions required careful preparation well in advance. As you've seen many times before, houses were built from slate and stone, providing natural insulation. Before winter, grain, cheese, meat and firewood were carefully stocked. Cattle were kept in stone enclosures and fed hay collected in summer. People gathered around the central stove, which prepared warmth and allowed them to cook. Today, these villages come alive only in the summer months, and thanks to that, even here in the depths of the mountains, there is now a tourist base with internet access.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I just tried it and it worked.
You know what? All hotels in Georgia have it.
Yeah, that's why I tried this one. I didn't even ask.
Having enjoyed some local specialities and a cold Tushetin beer in what appeared to be the only roadside bar in Parsma, I found myself sharing the company of bold hikers and locals trying to wait out unexpected rain. But it showed no signs of letting up anytime soon, so after about half an hour I decided to move on. This time with a hitchhiker heading to Girevi. From here, the road took on an entirely different character. Well, that was to be expected. Girevi is the last settlement before the wild emptiness. Today, only a handful of houses remain and traffic here is nearly non-existent. I tried to strike up a short conversation with my quiet passenger, curious about his journey, but he wasn't too talkative. Still, I didn't mind the silence. The distance was only a little over 2 kilometers and we covered it in just 8 minutes. Upon arrival, I dropped him off closer to the houses and drove down the river, searching for the perfect camping spot for the night.
Yeah, well, that's probably the funniest video ever. I'm not fishing here.